The accounts were harrowing. At a basic human level, the experiences of Boniface Mwangi and Agatha Atuhaire in Tanzania was simply heartbreaking. In a tell-all press conference, the two activists early this week narrated what they went through, all for their attempt to attend the treason trial of Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu in Dar es Salaam. Meanwhile, it's getting hot in the collar of internal critics of the Tanzanian government, with the outspoken Member of Parliament and Bishop Josephat Kwajima being the latest target. We stay across the border for an assessment of events in our southern neighborhood. But back home, no one knew Rose Njeri Tunguru until the National Police Service unveiled her as a website-developing young Kenyan. We have that story. We shall then move westwards to the lakeside town of Homa Bay, where Madaraka Day presented broad-based joys for residents and political leaders of that region. So what was the take-home? We take a broad-based view. On Jamila's memo, the art of shooting self in the foot, Kenya police style. On Kaikai's kicker, if you hate it, block them, countering the overlapping menace in Nairobi. And on my take, it's hats off to Boniface Mwangi, Agatha Atuhaire, and other activists for their countless sacrifices. Bonyo's Bone and Sam Sense take a break for today. The gang is here. Welcome to the program. The hashtag is Newsgang. And indeed, after that protest at the precincts of the High Court, Rose Njeri, who has actually said on Twitter that she would like to be referred to as Rose Njeri Tunguru, because the name Rose Njeri is fairly common and she, you know, is owning the space. But after those protests and appearances in court, we'll talk about just who was there. She was finally released after 4 days in police custody. Jamila, how did we get to this point of a little-known Rose Njeri Tunguru now becoming national headlines for over a week?
I think to understand Rose Njeri Tunguru's ordeal, we need to listen to what she said when she was interviewed by our own Ben Kirui yesterday, talking about her 4 days in the cells.
Usiku nne, you've kept me away from my kids for nothing. Yeah, you've awakened something. I saw it online. Someone chambuad the bill. Someone was like, we need an emailer like last year. See, last year there was one. But there is not an original idea. I was like, I can do this because now I have a few skills that I've picked up from school. So to me, it's just Najenga portfolio.
You hear what she says? For me, Najenga portfolio. And it's what she was actually doing.
Yeah.
No, she says in that soundbite that she was not doing something new. Because last year, someone had chambuad the finance bill.
Yeah.
I remember we talked about how social media was being used by young people to try and explain what was contained in the finance bill 2024. I remember I did a story where they had even done a breakdown of what exactly was contained in the bill and was being translated into different languages. There was even someone who was explaining it using sign language. Young people from different communities were explaining them. There was Somali, there was Kamba, there was Kikuyu, there was Luo. It was really translated. And there was a script because they didn't want their message to be distorted and they wanted the real thing to be able to reach the people. And she said someone did something like that last year, and I thought, why not do it this year?
Yeah.
It's not something new. And she was using her skills as a web developer and an activist to do that. But then, hey, presto, I don't know if that's the right word to use. Rose Njeri Tunguru was at a graduation ceremony in Nairobi's industrial area when officers from the DCI, Walimchukwa, arrested her. She was taken home, where detectives conducted a search and seized electronics and digital devices from her house. And Njeri talks about how she was taken to police custody. And I remember activists went to the police station trying to even see her, trying to find out what was going on with Njeri. And they were not allowed. In fact, on the day when she was presented to court, I remember LSK chair had gone to Pangani police station very early in the morning at 7:30. And she was told, and they were told that Njeri had already been moved. Where to? No one knew. And then finally she was presented to court, and of course we'll talk about who was there. But what is interesting about one of the things that Rose Njeri Tunguru said is that when she was taken from the police station, she was taken to the office of the ODPP. And they were parked outside there, and she says that's where the charge sheet was being drafted. So in fact, to her, she was like, all these 4 days that I'd been detained, there was no charges that was preferred against me, and the charge sheet was being drafted while on her way to court. And of course, that charge sheet raised a lot of questions in court when she was taken there. But I think putting her through that ordeal, and I don't know if Robert can play the soundbite of Rose Njeri's mother and Rose Njeri's aunt. We can listen to them back to back. They're talking about her ordeal. Rose is a mother of 2, and for her, having to stay away from her children for 4 days and in police custody, doing something that she says was really a service to the nation, was to her was ridiculous. Let's listen to what her mother and her aunt said after her arrest.
And then knowing there's a long weekend, I think that is very unfair.
Akona uoga, hajui what to do and what not to do. Hata hajui wakati mwingine hata anakataa kuongea na watu. Hajui the people that she should talk to or the people that she should not talk to.
Yeah, those are her mom and her aunt talking about her ordeal. But I think, Yvonne, for me, is what we said, that no one knew who Rose Njeri Tunguru was before she was arrested 5 days ago. No one knew her as any of the activists. In fact, last year, we have names that we talk about: Boniface Mwangi, Hanifa, we talk about Hussein Khalid, we talk about all these activists who came up during the Gen Z protests and after. Yeah. Njeri was unknown. But now, going after her the way they did, they've turned her into a hero. Everyone is singing her praises, saying that she's doing something that all of us really would have wanted to do. But the fact that she was arrested and manhandled and taken before courts and all those things really raises questions about how something that we really wanted to keep quiet would burst open in our faces because of how things were handled, Yvonne.
Yes, and I think before we get into even what that charge sheet looked like, I'd just like us to listen to what you were saying, you know, in Njeri's statement after her release from custody, where she talks about the number of men that were sent, you know, to arrest her. Let's take a look at that.
The illegal arrest and the intimidation by around 15 men, that's 3 Subarus, versus the lack of crime committed was ridiculous. And I'm happy that you all saw that as the case and reacted as you did.
All right, and that is, you know, that was after her arrest, and speaking on 15 men and all of these Subarus. But, you know, when we talk about even the sort of work that she's been doing, it's in line with what young people have been doing over the last year, right? Which is using the tools that are available to them to make a difference and to put that out there. Before we even talk about that charge sheet with you, Linus, and what she is said to have done, you know, Njeri may have been rather perhaps unknown, at least on a national scale, but online she's been doing some work. She is also behind a website called Insult Tracker that has been tracking the insults that we have seen hurled by politicians on the national stage. So this is activism that is being conducted by young people in the best way they know how, using the tools that are available to them. And so even when you take a look at that track record that leads us up to now this website surrounding the Finance Bill 2025, together which with the budget will be presented next week. I mean, Linus, that's where we are, and the charge sheet was rather interesting, was it not?
Yes, the charge sheet did trigger quite massive debate, especially online, primarily for having very basic errors that include reference of Njeri as male. And she is female, in fact, very female. And here is a charge sheet that was misrepresenting, first of all, the gender of the accused or the suspect. But quite a lot of sympathies to the arresting authorities because of the demeanor of the suspect. Yeah. Look at the demeanor of Njeri, very soft-spoken, small voice, which she describes it herself as small voice. And, you know, it's not the traditional kind of suspect for the kind of force that we know our police service for, you know, where you are arresting somebody that is either resisting or threatening. Yeah. This was a very soft kind of suspect. So soft that this ended up being actually showcased in the charge sheet. We don't want to preempt what the courts will do, but let's watch and see, because we have a very, very interesting charge sheet that attempts to actually suggest there was an offense in the generation of responses to the public participation questions that around the budget 2025. So this will be one of the most watched cases because cybercrime is still a very slippery space, even in law, to just track and make sure you pin down what the offense is. My heart goes out to the magistrate that will handle this, and more importantly, to the prosecution that has had a very bad start, because once you start a case with spelling errors, the road ahead can become really rough.
Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting. And you know, now in the era of everything that goes online, I mean, it's very easy for people to look at it and scrutinize. Like you said, there was spelling errors, there was, you know, male. You know, I won't go into discussing the merits and demerits, but, you know, I wonder if you say male and it's female, if, you know, you could just say, well, that's not me.
Yeah, it's the wrong person.
Yeah, wrong person. I don't know who that person is, but it certainly isn't me. But we will see how this case proceeds in court. But then I thought something else that was also interesting, even as we talk about the reactions to that, was who we actually, you know, saw in court. Because, again, just like last year, I think, with following the protests, we saw, I mean, I think just public litigation at its best, you know, the involvement of LSK to a great scale. But for a legal mind, I don't know what this meant for you, Linus, to see a former Chief Justice now on the other side of a courtroom. I wonder if we can listen to him. The former Chief Justice, Maraga, who was representing Rose Njeri in court. Let's listen.
Being charged, in our view, she should be applauded for having done the work of Parliament, for the Parliamentary Committee, and the institutions which are there to receive views.
I mean, look at the barrage of lawyers there. Former Chief Justice Maraga, Ndegwa Njiru, former president of the LSK, Eric Theuri. I believe
even Kalonzo Musyoka was there.
Senior counsel Kalonzo Musyoka, Eugene Wamalwa. And this is not to mention all the other lawyers, of course, who have stood with her. What a showcase, all right, for a case that, like you say, will be defining.
And there's a reason for this. And the reason is vigilance. You can tell that the sense, especially in the legal and civil liberty space, is there is a threat. This is one of those cases that can be seen from that perspective. That is it a threat to civil liberties? Is it a threat to freedom of speech? Is it a threat to basically the values that inform our democracy? Which is why you see how this then becomes a coalition civil liberties defenders. We had Hussein Khalid, we had actually former CJ, and then 2 former CJs,
yes.
No less, and then lawyers, politicians who have a legal background. All of them, because they see this entirely from the perspective of threats to the civil liberties that this country fought so hard for. And it is Chinua Achebe that says that if you see a toad or a frog jumping during the day, then you should know that something is after its life. And that is why you see former CJ Maraga in court. And look at how straight he was. He just said, isn't this lady worth commendations and not condemnations before what she's done? And that in his view, which is way before the case even starts, she has done a better job than Parliament in executing the same task that Parliament is supposed to be doing.
Yeah, before you come in, sir, I just want us to listen to that, to buttress what he was talking about, the civil liberties. Let's listen to Hussein Khalid and activist Manasseh Ahmed on her arrest and what this means for civil liberties in the country.
Akona haki ya kutumia akili yake kusaidia kuchangia katika masala ya kujenga taifa. We've asked the family ambao wameonana na Njeri na wameongea na polisi, wameambiwa she is being held on matters related to cyber crime. Na watu wakiuliza hiyo cyber crime ni nini amefanya ndio mnamshika na cyber crime, wana confirm ni hiyo website ambayo ametengeza.
It's oppression of freedom of speech, of the arts. We have Njeri, who is doing what the government is meant to do by facilitating public participation, which is our constitutional duty and right. And by creating a platform where Kenyans can more actively engage, understand this finance bill. Wacheni uoga serikali.
So wacheni uoga serikali. You know, they speak about what Njeri did and what that meant for facilitating public participation. Yeah. Because if you look at the charge sheet, we talk about it here, the state accuses Njeri of unauthorized interference with computer systems for developing a web-based platform that allegedly sent mass emails to the National Assembly's Finance Committee. The prosecution claims the influx of emails disrupted normal operations of parliamentary communication systems. And the detectives allege that the platform developed by Njeri directed the bulk emails to the official systems of the clerk of the National Assembly, and the prosecution argued that this constitutes a violation under the Computer Misuse and Cyber Crimes Act. Niko na swali. Is a public participation mnaambia watu tumeni memorandum kwa email ya parliament? Tuseme sisi sote wa Kenya milioni, wacha niupunguze 40 million Kenya, tuseme tunatuma wote memorandum kwa parliamentary website, tunatuma maoni yetu kuhusu. So it won't be able to handle it. So someone who's actually doing, anawasaidia kufanya ile kazi mkao unafaa kufanya, anashikwa. Because don't expect people to say nice things when you ask for public participation. Si wote hatuwezi sema pale tupige makofi, sema finance bill ni nzuri sana, endeleeni mbele. Now, no, people will raise questions. So if you did not want people to raise questions, don't ask for opinion in the first place. Right. But ni sheria lazima upate maoni ya wananchi, because finance bill affects all of us. And it doesn't make sense that someone who's actually using their skills, in fact, the best thing would have been Njeri, kuja tufanyie kazi hapa kwa serikali, tusaidie kukusanya maoni, how to do this.
And perhaps to build a system that is able to take
bulk,
a few hundred emails. However, you would imagine they would be prepared, right? Because last year, remember how many memoranda they received on email? Remember how many hundreds of individuals, private sector representatives made, their views on that matter. Anyway, we will see how the courts go.
But perhaps I think, it's open now. The finance bill had gone a bit chini ya maji, this particular one. But I think the events of last week have actually brought it all up, and people are really interested to see what is in this finance bill.
Right. And again, yes, Linus.
We spoke of vigilance on the part of the fraternity that defends the civil liberties of this country. But there is also a heightened sense of alert on the part of the security services. Yeah. Let's not forget where the 2024 June Gen Z's protests, how they caught everyone off guard. Yeah. And by everyone, I mean the security services. When suddenly things seem to go out of hand. They didn't see the Gen Zs coming. So right now, I think we should be allowed to assume this is part of their heightened state of alert, where you watch out for anything.
Right.
Anything. Could it be a website? Could it be a tweet? And for jumping to the wrong conclusions as well, I think it's basically part of being on the alert. And when you look at this particular case of Rose Njeri, it's not going to be an easy one for the security services.
Yeah. Pretty jumpy, I suppose. Yeah.